What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the You Know Ball podcast. I am your host, Troll Bro Dude. This is definitely not the second time I have tried this. We are going to do a first here today for our Underdog section. We are actually going to do a draft for the playoffs. On Underdog right now, you can use the promo code SLOP, that's S-L-O-P, to get a $100 deposit match. And you can actually draft teams based on which players and teams you think are going to get further into the playoffs. It's called The Dance. It's under the playoff section on Underdog. We're going to do our first one. We've been able to line it up. We're on the clock actually right now. So let me pull up the screen. I believe we're just going to end up getting... All right. We have the number one pick. So do we take Giannis, Jokic, Tatum, or Embiid?
I think we have to take Giannis.
Let's take Giannis.
Yeah.
I know we love to slander Giannis on the pod, but...
Yeah, but however,
number one seed right now, odds are heavily in the Bucks' favor that they're going to make a long run, even if it's only to the conference finals. It is interesting because with this draft, you kind of have to draft based on... Like a month ago, Anthony Davis wasn't even getting drafted, and now that the Lakers look like they're going to make the playoffs, or at least the play-in, and then potentially make it into round one, he's getting drafted way higher than he had been before because there's a chance now. So you basically have to get if there's an interesting strategy, you got to get creative sometimes with some of the picks that you make. Like obviously the top picks so far, we have Giannis was 1, Jokic 2, Embiid 3, Tatum 4, Durant 5. Okay, so you, and then you'll see as we go on, we'll get some of the bigger names up top, and then as you get further, you're drafting the role players from teams that you think are going to make it really far into the playoffs.
So, what did the stats accumulate, or is this just wins?
This is a accumulation of stats, and you can essentially reset your roster every round. So it's actually going to be a little bit more than a regular draft in terms of. Like, you actually have to draft based on guards, wings, and bigs. You can't just do it like the normal one where you draft, okay, I'm just going to draft the players I think are going to score the most. You have to have, like, a real roster, but you can always reset your team, which is why you draft a little bit more in this one. You fill out a full roster, basically. So, all right, so now we have Luka, Brook Lopez, DeAndre Ayton, and Sabonis. Or Kawhi is right there as well.
Luka and Brook is obviously going to go longer. Luka
15 seconds.
Let's do Sabonis actually.
Really?
I think so. He's a mix of stats and going far, I think.
All right. So we believe in the Kings now.
We believe I kind of they're going to end up on that other side of the bracket. I don't know.
We're on the clock again. We can get Luka too. So we can go with both.
Luka. Yeah,
there we go. So we got Luka. So we got basically right now we have. I didn't anticipate we were going to get Luka and Giannis, but Luka isn't even playing right now. So and also I don't know if the Mavs are going to make the playoffs. I know that sounds insane, but it's possible. There's at least a chance they lose in the play-in. So yeah, basically you'll see your strategy throughout here is like up top. I usually go with the guys I have a decent feel of. They're going to win at least a round. And I feel pretty confident in saying I think the Kings are going to win at least a round now. So you at least have that flexibility when you make it a little bit further. And then you have the guys like Luka and Kawhi who are just complete upside swings. They could lose in the first round or they could make a run. And then you have one of the best players on the best teams, which helps your team further into the playoffs. Yeah, so we're coming up on the clock right now. We have 2 picks. So we get back-to-back. It's a snake draft. So we get back-to-back. We have Aaron Gordon, Donovan Mitchell, Paul George, Anthony Davis, De'Aaron Fox. We could go double Kings here.
I kind of like De'Aaron Fox for the value here, to be honest. Like
last time we took De'Aaron Fox, it bit us in the ass, though. Remember?
Yeah, that's true. Also, Julius Randle is actually pretty good value too because he's going to be second round. He's going to be one of the top guys on his team. So
you're saying definitely going to beat the Cavs then in the first round, the Knicks.
Oh, I forgot they're playing the Cavs. All right, maybe.
So speaking of, we could get Donovan Mitchell right now.
Okay. Yeah, you know what?
I feel confident in Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah,
and then we can get all right. So
we need a wing or a big though.
Okay, so
you know what though? We could get no.
Yeah, because Luka's considered a guard. So we have. Oh
God, we kind of do need wings.
We have 2 guards, a wing, and a big right now.
Yeah.
So should we just take a wing? Julius Randle.
These guys are.
Oh no, Randle's a big.
Yeah. Let's just. I think we should take.
Go.
Julius Randle. Let's take him.
Oh, I missed it. Well, we're definitely just going to take Anthony Davis here. Yep.
No,
sorry. Unfortunately, I went to click it and it didn't go in time. So
we've blown it.
So we now have two bigs. So we definitely need a wing next time around because we have two guards. Mm-hmm. You don't want to get too heavy in one way or the other.
Oh, well, God, I mean, now we're tied to Anthony Davis, so we might as well get LeBron.
True. LeBron is on the board.
Will he be back? But will he be back?
I think he'll be back. I mean, they said reevaluated in 2 weeks. I know everyone's questioning right now. We're still, 3 weeks away from the first round of more than 3 weeks away from the first round of the playoffs.
Honestly, because this is fantasy, Tobias Harris is pretty decent value here, too.
There are a few guys, like, if you feel good about the teams.
Yeah.
Like, if you feel good about the Nuggets, Bruce Brown. If you feel good, KCP is also another guy that could make a deep run. Kevin Huerter. Tobias.
Grant Williams a wing. Very interesting.
How is Grant Williams a wing and Julius Randle is a big?
All right, we're gonna have to give some sponsor feedback on this.
Gonna have to yell at them for this.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense to me. They're both fours.
Yeah. No.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like I guess it would kind of be cheating though to be like, oh well, this guy's a wing and a big, because then it's just like ultimate flexibility for guys like Giannis and Randall, who like both can do. I mean, someone like Luka, you could be a guard or a wing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're coming up on the clock here. We got
shout out to that guy who just drafted Rob Williams. I love the optimism.
That high?
Yeah,
he does get a lot of stats though. He'll get blocks and steals and
rebounds. When he plays, he is a monster. But
all right, so we have LeBron or Tobias. We have LeBron or Tobias. No one's ever had
to take Tobias. We have to take Tobias over LeBron.
Are we taking?
Let's take both.
We'll take both. All right, we'll take Tobias and LeBron.
Well, we're taking Tobias first. I want Tobias to do this.
Tobias clears. LeBron. Anthony Edwards is also on the board, but Anthony Edwards.
The Wolves might not make it out of the play.
I think the Wolves are more likely to lose in the play-in, I would say.
Yeah.
Than if the Lakers actually get to that play-in, I feel confident about them winning 2 games or a game than I do about the Wolves. All right, now we can open up the full board because now we can kind of draft whoever. Because we have right now our team is Luka, Donovan Mitchell, Giannis, Tobias Harris, LeBron James, Sabonis, and Anthony Davis. Tobias really stands out that group.
0 shooting. Like, look at the shooting on our fucking team.
Hey, you got to give. Geez, that's a good point. Yeah. If this were a real team, it would be gross.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Fortunately, it's not a real team. But we can pick up some shooting here. Desmond Bane, Jordan Poole still on the board. Anthony Edwards still on the board. Might be worth a flyer. Mikal Bridges is going to score a lot in the first round, but I can't see the Nets winning a series. So you're basically just drafting him for your first round team.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at in the draft right now. All right, Bane just went. The best guys on the board right now are Anthony Edwards, Bruce Brown, Jordan Poole, Jared Allen, Mikal Bridges.
D'Angelo Russell might not. Well, I guess he's also a Laker though, and we've got.
Then we're basically dependent on the Lakers making a run if we draft.
What about Trae Young? I mean, we've drafted a lot of other guys who are going to be one and dones.
Have we? Maybe Luka and maybe
LeBron and Anthony Davis.
Yeah, true. I guess you're just taking an all upside swing type.
Yeah.
I would like to make some safer picks though. Like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is a guard.
Okay.
I have a feeling that Denver's going to win at least a round or 2.
Okay.
But we'll talk about that later in the episode because there's some comments that have been made by teams. Let's just say that we could get Anthony Edwards, who's injured right now, as a guard, or is he a wing? He's a wing. All right, so we're on the clock. So do we want to go safe? We want to go safe and upside. We can do one upside, one safe. Like take Bruce Brown.
I think our upside should be Trae Young.
Okay, so we'll take Trae Young.
Yeah.
All right. Let's grab Trae. And then so we're not going to get Anthony Edwards. We're going to get do we want Bruce Brown, Grayson Allen, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope?
Yeah, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's probably the best one on the.
Oh, did he just go?
No, he's lower.
Okay, there he is. All right, so Kentavious Caldwell. I have a feeling they're going to make a decent run.
Yeah.
So now we're set at guard, and then basically I believe we have one pick left Yeah, we have one pick left. We'll get whoever the best big is available. Because if you look at our roster right now, we have 3 guards. We have Luka, Donovan Mitchell, Trae Young. We have Giannis, Tobias, LeBron, KCP. And then bigs-wise, we have Sabonis and Anthony Davis. So we'll just take whoever the best big is left on the board. So we have 3 bigs. Because the problem is, if your bigs, like if Anthony Davis and them lose in the first round, or they even lose in the play-in, you basically need the Kings to go far to have a big in the late rounds.
Yeah. If Zubac gets back to us, that's pretty good. Like, it's a lot of rebounds for a team that has a pretty good chance to at least win one, you know?
Mm-hmm. God damn, I'm looking down the list, though. It's getting pretty grim pretty fast.
Yes,
it's like
Zubac. Landell doesn't move you.
The Grizzlies with Steven Adams, if he comes back, that's actually not a bad move because he's gonna get rebounds.
He doesn't really get a ton of stat. Like he screens a lot. He makes them better. But
true, it's a good point.
But Christian Wood is definitely the best. And Cat, but
does Christian Wood play minutes in the playoffs? Is the real question.
I mean, he better, or they're fucked. Like,
I mean, I think they might be fucked.
Yeah,
I think that might be answer. That's the thing with Steven Adams is like there's going to be certain matchups where you're like, is Steven Adams going to play this series?
Like Zubac will like have like a 16-10 game, and for a team that like has a pretty good chance to like at least
win a round or two. Yeah. I was gonna say in my earlier ones, I was just drafting team like role players from like the Sixers, Celtics, Nuggets. Like I wasn't like taking these upside swings, but Zubac definitely gets like he averages 10 and 10.
Yeah.
So he's gonna get some fantasy points. Let's see if he goes though. Let's see if he gets drafted because we got 2 picks left and then we're up. All right. No, he took Marcus Morris and then quickly. Okay, so we can get Zubac here with our last pick.
Let's go
and just hope. So our final team, it is now gone, but our team is kind of loaded. I'm not gonna lie. I'll have to edit that down because I don't think people want to sit through that for 13 minutes. But yeah. So sign up for Underdog. You can now do NCAA. Yeah. Sam, I know you're really excited.
I'm so excited. So a lot of you guys don't know this, but I'm like just a giant Purdue fan. Like I am the biggest Boilermaker guy like ever. Unfortunately, I was like super busy like the last 4 or 5 days. So I've just been like really offline. I DVR'd all of the games, all of the tournament. So right after we finish recording this, I'm going to hop on. I'm going to watch all of them back to back. I'm going to watch, both of Purdue's wins. Going to see how their Sweet 16 matchup, kind of shakes out. I'm hoping, Zach Edey looks good.
Yeah.
I also put a lot of money on Brandon Miller's higher, lower. So I'm really excited to see how many points he scored in his debut outing. So just really exciting, really great time to be a Purdue fan. I know it's been really disappointing like the last 2 times, but like I got a really good feeling. Yeah, I've got a really good feeling about this team, and I have put so much money. I'm very heavily leveraged on this game, but I know it's great. It's going to be great. I'm very excited to watch it.
Yeah, no, I mean, you have the best coach in the country, Matt Painter, who definitely should have. Honestly, we'll probably get a contract extension after this weekend. I would imagine. Probably should have them a ton of job security.
They've been a top team, and while I know it's been like disappointing, I think with this year's performance, that'll really set the tone.
Yeah, it's like in a few years it will be like when we're talking about some of the greats, it will be like Roy Williams, Coach K, Matt Painter, like 100%. Like I would say he's going to be up on that Mount Rushmore of
Jim Boeheim if you didn't hit that guy with a car. those kind of coaches. Allegedly. Is that allegedly? I think that's well, let's say it's an allegedly.
Let's say allegedly.
Yeah.
Say allegedly. Yeah. Great guy though. Yeah. What a great career. Yeah. Awesome career. He definitely deserves all of the praise that he gets. Not a scumbag at all. So let's get into what's been going on in the NBA recently. So I've got to lead off this episode with some positive, for some good vibes for once from me, from the Sixers. I've been more positive on the Sixers the last 2 months or so. I've been saying this team looks different. This team looks better. They don't seem to lose the games that they used to lose. They have a ton of indicators over the past, let's say, 2.5 months that this team is way closer to a contending team than a team that will be an early round flameout. Unfortunately, as we have discussed before, they have to, get through the Celtics and or the Bucks probably, unless they can continue to win these games and get the 1 seed. The Raptors couldn't do them any favors last night, unfortunately. Jakob Poeltl dropped the ball out of bounds. Great pickup, Masai. But
definitely worth the first round pick.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And right now the Sixers and the Celtics are basically on opposite trajectories in terms of how they started the season versus where they're at now. And someone brought this up to me. Do you remember the tweet that was like the Sixers and the Celtics can never be good at the same time?
I think that was me.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I think that was me. I think every other year rule.
Yeah.
I've tweeted this. I said to Z, what famous Sixers fan, and I told her, I said, if it makes you feel any better, we're due to have a nightmare year next year, and you guys are gonna finally make the finals.
Yeah,
and
the Sixers Celtics corollary, as I believe.
Right.
Yeah,
They cannot be good at the same time, and they also can't be like bad at the same time. Like one team has to be having a nightmare year.
Sure.
And like last year was our turn to have like a good year, and you guys were obviously the ones having like the nightmare year with like
the Ben Simmons stuff
and
sure.
everything. Yeah. And then like Embiid breaking his face and all of that stuff. So
I do just want to say, I got to point out, it's kind of funny that even in this scenario, the nightmare year for the Celtics in like 2018, 2019 was they lost in the second round, which is still the highest ceiling that the Sixers have had so far. You guys have made it to the finals. You made it to 3 conference finals now, I believe.
Okay, but let me defend myself, though. There are real stakes for the Celtics. There's a chance our all-star shooting guard could walk after the year. You guys have no idea what that's like to be under that pressure. So
he could force his way out. You never know.
He could force his way out. There's a lot of whispers about him leaving. It's just, Sixers fans, quite frankly, are a little spoiled. You have no idea what
I would say so. Yeah. The fact that they started, I was on here after the 1-4 start, the 12-12 start, and I was like, this team just doesn't really feel like they have it. Like it felt as though the slow start to the season is actually going to end up coming to bite them in the ass a little bit, just because of this fight for the 1 seed, because if they had even gone, as someone pointed out, if they had even gone 14-10, they would be tied with the Bucks for the 1 seed right now. But because they went 12-12, they had some early bad injury luck with Harden being out for a month and Maxey missing a few weeks. And even Embiid had a stretch where he didn't play for a little bit. But since the 12-12 start,
he was also bad. Like, we should say that too. Embiid was like straight up.
Oh yeah, he was horrible for the first like 5 to 10 games of the year. He was. It was like I was worried about like
he did the Tatum thing.
Yeah. Have we seen the best of Joel Embiid was starting to go through my mind, and I was like, he's 28, he's a big, he's whatever. Well, ever since then, and especially ever since 2 weeks ago when I said I don't think he's the MVP, he's played like the MVP. He's played like the best player in the league for almost a month now. He's been on an insane heater recently. The best stretch that I've seen from him from a two-way perspective ever in his career. I think he's had offensive stretches where he's put up similar productivity. I think earlier in his career defensively he was better. But he's better on both ends now in a more consistent way that I haven't seen in quite some time. A lot of people there's just like a faction of Sixers fans, no matter what they do in the regular season, they will never be convinced that anything will be different or anything will change until they see it in the playoffs. And I understand that because there's really nothing that this team can do to prove that because of the fact that they've been a good regular season team before. But I will say, to me, this is by far the best iteration of the Joel Embiid Sixers.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people like to compare it to the 2018-2019 team, which had Jimmy Butler, but there's also a lot of rose-tinted glasses when it comes to that team. The fact that that team only really won 52 games, like they were good, but like this team's almost certainly going to win more games. They're almost certainly going to have a better net rating. They're going to be heading positively, trending in the right direction, heading into the playoffs. Whereas that team, there were a lot of questions about that team. No one knew if Jimmy Butler was going to stay after the season. They traded for Tobias Harris. They were kind of figuring it out on the fly. This team's had a lot more time to flesh things out. Over their last 46 games after the 12-12 start, they are 36-10 with a plus 7.2 net rating, which is the number one in the NBA by a good margin. They have the number one offense, which is a 122 points per 100 possessions, which is 3 full points better than the Kings' number one offense on the season. They are in that stretch. They are number 3 in efficiency field goal percentage, which is something that I've talked a lot about with the Sixers in the past, is that I feel like while they had okay offenses because Joel was able to drag them to like a respected offense, I felt like a lot of it wasn't, they didn't always get the most efficient looks. They weren't the most explosive offensive team. They were just kind of grinding out wins and out talenting teams, essentially, is what I feel like. I feel like this team gets good quality looks. I feel like they are able to convert them at a good clip. I feel like offensively the process is better than it's ever been during the Embiid era with Doc, with anything. And right now, they're in the middle of an 8-game winning streak. We're recording this right before the Bulls game, but they're in the middle of an 8-game winning streak with 4 blowouts against middling to bad teams. But that's something that, like, as we've said with the Bucks, that's something good teams do. It's what the Celtics were doing at the end of last year and the beginning of this year. It's what the Bucks have been doing pretty much for a month or two now. Mm-hmm. And I think that the fact that they are able to beat you in a lot of ways, and no matter who's on the schedule, they seem to continue to like kind of give a shit. And I feel like that matters heading into the playoffs as you're ramping up your minutes, as you can even get Joel some rest. They've had 4 fourth quarters that he hasn't played in the last 2 weeks. And I think that's massive for when I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, because my thing is like, when does the injury come? When does the fucking insane thing that we're always waiting for, when is it right around the corner? But for right now, as it stands on March 20th, I've never said this before. I think this Sixers team can win the championship.
Yeah.
And that's the first time I've ever said that about any Sixers team. I've said maybe they have an outside chance if they get lucky, but on paper, from what they've shown for the last month or two, this is by far the best Sixers team that I've seen in forever. And I think that they have as good a shot as anyone else.
I'm going to go back to what I said before the year, and I still feel this same way. I lost. I'm not going to lie. I quietly backed off this take a little bit when they came out of the gate. Not great, but the Sixers team, if they get the number 1 seed, is absolutely a threat to win the title. I'm even starting to get to. I've kind of, my whole thing has been like, if the Sixers can avoid the Celtics, I'm starting to even get to the point like they might not need to avoid the Celtics. Like I think the vibes are fucked up with the Celtics. And while I do still think that there exists that rock, paper, scissors that you and I have talked about a lot, and I think it's
that everyone keeps talking about now.
Everyone is cribbed from us. They stole our whole flow, bar for bar, word for word. But I think that, because I think the problem, the thing is that you do need the number 1 seed, because it is going to be such a war, whoever it is in that 2-3 matchup, and I think physically, you can't go into a series against the Bucks because, playing in a series against Giannis, he's basically legally crashing a car into you like 700 times during, like, you're getting in a minor car accident like at 13 times a game if you play against like Giannis, and you either need, like, you guys do have PJ Tucker. Like, you both have the meatballs in Grant Williams and PJ Tucker who are there to like absorb that contact. But I just like worry about I don't know, like there is some like injury stuff there. Everyone's going to bring up Harden's playoff record. I mean, you're not going to be looking at James Harden though. You're going to be looking at Joel Embiid. Like I think is the difference. And that's like the first time really in James Harden's career in like elimination games, you're going to be like looking at that. I think this team, way more than any other Sixers team, has some of that flexibility that we talk about just in terms of being able to adapt to different matchups. Like I know you were not thrilled, but and I didn't think this was the best move, but I think McDaniels has really worked out for you guys. And I think he really has given you guys like a much needed extra dimension just in terms of like 3-4 switchability with size, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that is like guys who can credibly defend on the wing, but also have like that 6'10" size are like kind of the secret sauce a little bit. And I think that is, you know, I think being able to have that extra look alongside like PJ Tucker, I think it kind of negates Niang to like a more of a DH role for like when you need him
in a Buck series. That's like the like he basically can only play in a series where you can hide him defensively, and the half court offense by the Bucks being the way that it is the only. And honestly, I actually think their half court offense and their offense in general has gotten better as the season has gone on. The numbers show it. When you watch it, shows it. But I will say, kind of going off that point, it reminds, and it's not quite on the same level of this acquisition, but when the Rockets had PJ Tucker at the end of his run and they traded him to the Bucks, I remember being like, I don't really see what this does for the Bucks. Like, to me, PJ Tucker is a clunky fit offensively. He's redundant with a lot of what they do defensively, and that I don't really see the value of trading for PJ Tucker at this deadline. And then later, when we got to the playoffs, you saw exactly what you're talking about, where you can go smaller when you have a lot of 3s, 4s, and 5s that can switch, that can rebound, that can fuck shit up defensively. And that was the vision that Morey in the front office had with McDaniels was, you know, while Thibault might have been an on-off monster this year, we've seen it in the playoffs before with him. We've never seen it with McDaniels before, but in theory, with him, with Paul Reed at the 5, it's a nightmare for other teams in terms of getting into passing lanes, in terms of turning the ball over, contesting shots because of their length and athleticism. And then if you even have a matchup where Paul Reed has struggled against the Celtics in his career, okay, maybe he can't play in the Celtics matchup, but also the Celtics might go small some, and you can put PJ at the 5 and you put Jalen at the 4. And then you have some flexibility there in terms of we have some lineups that can space the floor on the other end where you could just go 5 out with Harden. And then that becomes really tough for both sides to defend. And then you're basically just hoping that you can outscore that team. And I think that this team, while I still feel like there's certain matchups where like even starters on this team, like Maxey and Tucker, or even Tobias, who struggled recently, but offensively, I think that there are certain matchups where it's going to be tough for them, but I also think that adding McDaniels, having Niang at least for a Buck series, having Daniel House just to be able to throw out there as another athletic defender that isn't going to be terrible offensively. And then the Melton element is like Melton's by far the best bench player that they've had during this whole run. It is very much that like they have flexibility and they have depth in a way that they've never had before. And the thing that beyond Embiid's injuries and Simmons' playoff performances and whatever happened last year and all that shit, the biggest issue to me with the Sixers has always been depth. And they don't have playable playoff players. And now they at least have a number of guys that they can try to put into the carousel essentially and just be like, all right, let's see if this guy works. Let's see if this guy works. And Doc, to his credit, has rode the hot hand in certain games, had really good feel with his rotations recently, which is crazy for me to say because I've always thought he was really bad with that. But like when Shake's playing well, Melton's minutes get cut. When Melton's playing well, Shake's minutes get cut. And then you have like him throwing out Daniel House the other night. Daniel House has a good game. So like, I think that they've essentially kind of made this, I don't want to, kind of fuck myself here, but they kind of have made the roster Doc-proof in a way, in that the only guy that they've given him is Dedmon that he can play. Dedmon and Niang are the two guys that like could really get blown up in a certain matchup and look like shit. But Dedmon's barely played because Paul Reed's just been good. And then the Niang thing is like, he's been shown to pull the, he's benched Tobias at the end of games. He's benched Tucker. He's benched Niang. Like, he's actually had a good feel for these things. And that's massive to me because I've always felt like it was one of his weaker points of being a coach. And I think I can get beyond all the other stuff if the best players are playing well. And I think that the coaching stuff doesn't matter as much unless it's like we're coming down to like the real margins of a series. And then maybe I don't feel great about the coaching advantage. But if the best players play well, I'm not really going to be mad about the coach.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I think that the Sixers also like can get to the line, which is, you know, easy offense.
Number one in the NBA the whole season. Yeah.
Yeah. You're, you know, like, I think this is all like pretty translatable. I mean, the Sixers don't really run, but look, if you can have the results they have not running in the regular season, that's probably good for your playoff hopes, to be honest, because if you're like you know, if you could score in the half court, you can win.
And also the effort and energy goes up for every team in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So that just like teams like the Raptors last year and teams like the Grizzlies, they struggle when they get to the playoffs because they can't run the whole game.
Yeah.
When the effort levels from the other team goes up, getting back on defense. That's just kind of the reality of the playoffs.
It's the talent, you know, like that's what it like comes down to. And, you know, you've got Joel and like Harden, two guys who have like been maligned for being like, you know, gassed early in games and like, you know, kind of doing some of that stuff. I don't know. I think that the Sixers, they're pretty well positioned. I mean, like, they have a lot of the same, you know, there's a lot of the same stuff that we talk about, but I think that they are genuine, like, as a neutral observer, they are very genuinely in the conversation with the Bucks and, you know, whoever else you want to put in there, as far as, you know,
not the Celtics. Although I actually did look it up because I was curious. I know the Sixers have the best road record in the NBA right now, which is another good sign. Like, yeah, they're 22-12, but they have more games down the stretch to play than most teams. Like they have a backloaded schedule. Like they still have.
Celtics have played 2 more games than that. They have a win and a loss. One more win, one more loss than the Sixers right now. So
yeah. So like, and for example, you know, even with the Celtics struggles, they have the 4th best road record at 23-14. The Kings are actually 2nd, which another good sign for them.
Bill's kind of sold. We'll get to that later, but Bill's kind of sold me on the Kings, to be honest. Like, I didn't see myself falling for that, but I don't know.
The indications, if you believe in the regular season, the indications are there for certain teams. The difference to me between the West and the East is that I think the 3 best teams are in the East. Yes, and I think that the 3 best teams are in the East. And on the whole, they've had most of their team, at least for the last 2 to 3 months. Now, Celtics have had injuries. Sixers had injuries early in the season. Bucks had missed Middleton, obviously, for a good chunk of the season. But on the whole, I think that those teams have played the large majority of games with most of their guys in them. Mm-hmm. The Western Conference is just like a jumbled fucking mess in terms of all that. So, like, do I take a little bit less from the Western Conference stuff than the Eastern Conference stuff?
Yes.
I might. Because the Suns got KD at the deadline, the Mavs got Kyrie, the Clippers have their load management shit where like Kawhi isn't playing on back-to-backs. Paul George missed a ton of games. The Lakers obviously have their mess. So like I take a little bit less.
Ja Morant had his thing. Like literally every team has what you're talking about.
The Kings have had availability unlike any other team in the Western Conference except for maybe Denver.
The Pelicans were number 1 in the West, like what, 30 games in, and are like not going to make the play-in. Like,
it's crazy. That was the craziest part. I didn't even realize this, but remember how we were talking early in the season? People had brought this up. How we were like, "Oh my God! Like, are the Lakers and the Pelicans going to swap picks? And are they going to get Wemby?"
Yeah.
And now the Lakers, that pick isn't even going to swap. And the Pelicans are going to end up with a top 10 pick probably, and the Lakers might not even be in the lottery. So, like, it's kind of crazy how things have swayed, but that's what happens with injuries. That's what happens with the availability of these guys throughout the course of a season, which is why I might take a little bit of a grain of salt with the Kings, whereas I might believe in the numbers a little bit more with the Celtics, Bucks, and Sixers, because I think that they've proven that they're the best teams in the NBA. So I might be a little bit skeptical of the Kings still, just because of the fact that we have not seen them in the playoffs before. Not that the Sixers have a great track record, but they've at least won series. We've never seen this with the Kings. And I feel as though when we come back to like the Eastern Conference and we look at some of the shit with the Sixers, some of the shit with the Celtics, some of the shit with the Bucks, they've all had their, like, the Bucks started crazy hot. The Celtics started crazy hot. They both cooled down a little bit, and it feels like the Bucks have gotten back on track. The Celtics are still kind of on like a wobbly kind of feel right now.
A little bit of an understatement. But...
Yeah. I mean, look. I'm not even trying to defend the Celtics because I've watched, and it's concerning. I mean, and we've talked.
I'm very alarmed. Yeah. I'm very alarmed.
I think you have good reason to be alarmed. I'm not saying that you don't, but also and we're going to talk later about the Bill podcast, but you have Bill going on there and saying that he's worried about the Heat, and I know you've been worried about the Heat matchup in general.
But they're so bad, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, like this version of the Heat. Yeah. Like that's the thing is like this is by far the worst stretch that we've seen from the Celtics in the past since basically they made the leap halfway through last year. This is the worst stretch that we've seen from the Celtics. Yeah. And in the last 14 games, they have the same record as the Heat right now. And the Heat are on like more of an upward trajectory compared to where they were before. Like they're actually performing slightly better than they were before. So I think that there's context to all of this. I think if you want to talk about from a championship standpoint, I would be concerned about the Celtics. From winning a playoff series, from playing these lower seed teams like the Heat and the Hawks and those kind of teams, I wouldn't be worried about that at all. I still think that there is a level that the Celtics can reach, especially when they have a little bit better health, that they will either end up facing this. The thing is, they're almost definitely going to face the Sixers or the Bucks in the second round now, which seems harder for them than it did early in the season because of all the issues that they've run into. But before we get on to the Celtics, three more things about, I already said the best road record. They have the most comeback wins, which I don't know if I feel good about that or not. Like, I think it shows resiliency in a way that they haven't before, but also it worries me a little bit that, like, I know it's a different sport, but like the Minnesota Vikings did that all year in football. And then the second they got to the playoffs, it's like, well, we knew they were frauds. They only won on comebacks. That's a little bit like you could look at it either way, glass half full, glass half empty.
I think those are totally different sports, though, because there's so much less scoring in football, but that is a much more random event. You know what I'm saying? Like,
sure.
I do think that there's more of an opportunity to like even things out. And again, I think the Sixers are kind of, you know, you guys are headlined by two stars who, let's just say, know how to like manage their effort.
Manage their effort, and it's been a positive outcome for me that they've been shown that they can fight. And like, that is something that every Sixers team before this one did not do. It was like, they laid down and died. They didn't fight their way back into games. They didn't, their execution was terrible down the stretch. They're one of the best clutch teams in the NBA now, which some of that might regress with like hot shooting, but like the fact that they're competing in these games, and every time they go into a big game, or even like a game where it feels like it could be a letdown game, they don't let down like they used to. Like they've had games certainly where like they lost to the Magic off the back of the Bucks win, where like, yeah, it sucks. Or maybe it was I might have been the Heat. I can't remember. They lost a game. Oh, it was the Nuggets. They talked about it on Bill's podcast. It was the Nuggets. They lost to they beat the Nuggets, and then they lost to the Magic on the second half of that. And yes, but that kind of happens to every team now. Like it's the same thing with the comeback thing where like, yeah, I know the Celtics have blown a lot of leads, and the Sixers have had a lot of comebacks, but that kind of is the modern NBA, as I constantly joke about, is like, I can almost chalk up some of this shit to modern NBA shit. And I don't feel as though the Sixers team really has as many letdown games as they've used to. Like, without Embiid this season, where they've always been below 500, or at least I would say, I think on the whole, they're like a game or two below 500. And they had that 17-game winning streak, mostly without Embiid a few years ago. Keep in mind, they're 9-4 without him this year. In the games when Harden doesn't play, but Maxey and Embiid do play, they are 8-1. So that was shout out to at Sixers Rank who said that. So overall, I feel like that no matter who's out there, whether Embiid's in, Embiid's out, Harden's in, Harden's out, as long as they have two of their main guys, I feel like they have a chance to beat anyone in the regular season. And if all of those guys are, clicking, hitting on all cylinders like they have been recently, they have a shot to beat anyone in the playoffs, including the Celtics, which is insane to me. Because a month ago, I was still like, there's one matchup in the NBA I can't see them winning. With the way the Celtics have played recently, with the whole, with the Sixers being pretty much way better than them since December, I would say I feel a little bit better about that matchup than I did before. And I think the Sixers can beat anyone, but it just comes down to, who's available, what the path looks like, and kind of how all teams are playing heading into that second round. So let's get to the Celtics really briefly, because I know that you said you're not feeling great about them right now. By the way, their record since we have the Discord did some digging and they did some informational pulling here. Since Ash Wednesday.
Oh no.
The Celtics are 7-6. I'm just saying, is Catholicism ruining the Celtics?
This is what we get for making a papist, our coach. We started a sex panic. Yeah, there was a sex panic, and then we installed a papist. So it's I just like to point out that is a New England tradition. That is the Salem witch trial. No, we'll have to cut that part. Look, I think that here's what I have to say about the Celtics. I am someone who was like driven insane last year by like them being bad, because I was watching the team and they're not bad. They're a good team. I am not having that same like bout of dissociative, like they look like they suck. I'm sorry. Like they look like a bad team, like, which is way more alarming to me than like the results process thing. And again, like the last time the Celtics were bad, the thing in common, the underlying thing of this, everyone wants to attribute it to coaching, which, yes, true. Joe Mazzulla sucks. Yes. He ran that same fucking play at the end of the Jazz game that everybody knows is fucking coming again. All of this, the same shit, like over and over again. Honestly, it really just comes down to Jason Tatum sucks. I'm sorry. Like that is what happened. Like that is the underlying thing. It is a stars-driven league. And I'm sorry, when your star isolates on like 34% of his percentages and he's like 12th percentile or something like that on isolation scoring, like you're going to be bad. You're going to be bad. Like that's just what it is. Like he very genuinely was a real MVP candidate. Like at the beginning of the year, he was in first in the straw poll, through a month. We both thought that he was going to win the MVP. I thought this was the year, and he has been. I don't think he should make first team All NBA. Like right now, I would, if I had a vote. I'm a Celtics fan. I would not vote for him for like first team All NBA. He's not been good. Jaylen Brown has been our best player. Probably, if you average it out, it's close. Like the whole year's scoring, and look, that's not good. That's not like to say Jaylen Brown is like suddenly like. But if you guys are going to win a championship. Yeah, I mean, I just think it has to be Jason Tatum. It has to be Jason Tatum, and I think there's a lot of stuff like Rob's injury sucks too. This is why I was kind of going insane that we didn't sign like a third big, and like I get that you can get Malcolm Brogdon. He's a very good player. He's had a very solid year for the Celtics. The Celtics didn't need guard. That was never going to be the issue. It was always going to be one of Al or Rob is going to get hurt this year. Lo and behold, it was Rob. And this is what happens. You're playing Luke Cornett. You're playing Grant Williams. You just don't have size, and you can't match up. I think they lost the offensive rebound battle like against the Jazz. I think it was like 17-2, 17-4, or something like that. Like, I'm sorry, that shit is not going away in the playoffs. It's definitely not going away in the playoffs against Joel fucking Embiid in the front line of Giannis Antetokounmpo and Brook Lopez. Like, they're just. I don't like. I know that there is like a psychic factor, and I would not be shocked if the Celtics did beat the Sixers if it ended up being like a 2-3 matchup. But I'm not feeling good. Like I used to like write that shit off, like no problem. I don't know, and I know everyone's like, Cry Me a River Celtics fans, whatever. We're spoiled, but I'm just telling you, like this is different. Like I'm like very adverse to panic.
No, you haven't been panicked at all throughout all of this.
Yeah. Now I'm starting to get worried because there is no, like, you've got to start fixing shit. This has gone on a little too long for it to be a slump. They've lost to a lot of bad teams, most importantly, middling and bad teams. Back to your point against how the Sixers have been taking care of business. If you lose, even games that they've won have been fucking close. Like,
Timberwolves.
Yeah.
They had the one impressive win against the Trailblazers, which actually they almost ended up blowing it at the end of that game too, when Dame went on a little 10-0 run at the end of that game. They had the close game against the Timberwolves that they honestly, I thought that they got I know I was getting shit from Celtics fans for this, but Joe Mazzulla ran onto the court and they didn't call anything. I was like, look, that is in any game, I would say that's a technical foul. Like you can't run onto the court while the game is still being played.
Hold on. In his defense, he has like literally no assistant coaches to hold it back, which most other
they're all leaving for other jobs.
we have our coaching staff has been like fucking gutted. I mean, like, look, is Joe Mazzulla a bad coach? People are saying this a lot about Joe Mazzulla like being a bad coach. I don't know if he's a bad coach. He's not a good coach right now. That's like for sure. Like Ime like figured some stuff out. Like there's like a very reactionary part of like Celtics fans, we want to be like, Ime, this wouldn't have happened under Ime. Yeah, maybe. I mean, he would have yelled, called them all like bitch made baby food, and like everything would have been fine. But I don't know about all that. I think it's more cut and dry. I mean, Jason Tatum has gone diaper mode. At the worst time, and I simply think he's too high caliber a player. I mean, I think Tatum defenders would come out here and say, well, like, look at the rest of the team. Look at the rest of the team. I'm sorry.
I think the fact that you guys have won a lot of games when he's played shitty is more a testament to the fact that the rest of the team is actually pretty good.
Yeah, and I guess that's just like my point is like this is like very brutal for me because I really fucking hate the way Jason Tatum plays a lot of the time. And then it really seemed like he finally turned a corner. And I was like, finally, I can stop being like the shitty fan who's like nitpicking at my team star. Like I can get behind him 110%. I can be part of like the MVP propaganda shit. And he just goes back to being like fucking Kobe again. He's Kobe again. Like he is 2023 Kobe. This is what it would look like if Kobe played in today's league, by the way, is what Jason Tatum like looks like right now. Like, and it's bad, man. Like he's still a good defender. There's still like other like reasons here. I still do think like his positional versatility, all the same like talking point bullshit I was going on about when I was like caping for him that all still exists. But he like. I'm sorry, I put this pretty squarely at his feet. When he's playing good and you win, and when he's playing bad, and sometimes it really is that fucking simple.
Yeah. I not saying this for the first 2 weeks of the season when everyone wanted Doc fired? Yeah. I was like, look, by the second or third week of the season, I was like, maybe you have to fire Doc because of all of the things that have happened. But most of my early season podcasts when the Sixers were struggling were like, hey, there's a player on this team that's the best player on the team that is honestly, especially the first 3 games of the season, was playing like shit. And I was like, it's hard to overcome that unless you have a team that kind of has. And honestly, I'll say this much. I know he hit the game-winning shot against the Sixers. I didn't think he was good in either of the Sixers games, and you guys won those games. So that's where I felt more defeated post that matchup. But you talk about a lot of things during that rant, and I want to pick on 2 of them. One being, first off, we love the Mike Muscala pickup. I thought it was great. I don't really think he's had that much of an effect on he barely plays. He's like a fringe rotation guy, only really plays in certain games. Probably won't play in the playoffs. The other thing, if you guys somehow had gotten Jared Vanderbilt, which I know all of those teams were gunning for, that was the one guy that I felt like, man, that would be the best insurance policy possible, to the point where like if he worked out, you could even explore trading Rob this offseason, because it's like, I think that he has the upside to be that kind of level of player and give you more lineup flexibility. He's just going to be available more than Rob Williams. Yeah. And the other part of, you talk about the Malcolm Brogdon trade, which I still think on the whole was a great trade. You guys gave up a late first round pick for player. Aaron Nesmith and a late first round pick is a steal.
Yeah, we're not getting. I don't think Aaron Nesmith. He's been playing all right, honestly, for the Pacers, but that's not coming back to haunt us.
No, definitely not.
And our pick is probably not going to haunt us this year.
But I do want to say, one of the reasons that trade might not look that great in retrospect, despite it being a very good value trade, is the fact that it gives another guy for Missoula to play over Derek White. And Derek White has, as we've discussed, been very clearly the third best player. Yeah. He hasn't been closing games. He didn't play at all in the fourth quarter against the Jazz. It's not to say that Derek White is like a perfect player or anything, but he's certainly shown that he is a big, if there's a Sixers series, I would argue if there's a Sixers or a Bucks series, you might be better off, even if Rob is healthy, you might be better off playing small in some of those games and putting Derek White out there more often, because of the fact that, like, as good as Rob is, and something that Zach Lowe talked about on his podcast that you said before the season, which was that Rob's actually might be more essential to the Celtics offense than he is to their defense because of the spacing and the passing and all the shit, the offensive rebounding.
Honestly, the Celtics defense has been like pretty fine this whole time. Like, it's just that the offense has gone off a fucking cliff. Like, I mean, you know, Marcus Smart is also clearly injured and like not the same guy. Like, but like, give me a fucking break. Every team has a starter who's like, you know, out or hurt. You know, some people are telling me that like Tatum's wrist is like worse than like is being like reported, and I do kind of buy that, because he is such a fucking hooper. He like literally will not stop playing basketball. That's like the other bad to good thing about Jason Tatum is he's an Iron Man. He plays all these games, but he like also literally will not take rest and will just play through all of these like fucking things to his detriment. He'll play fucking basketball in the offseason. He'll play for Team USA and like just not stop playing. And I think that, so, you know, maybe there's some credence to that, but
we've been joking about this in a group DM. I'm like, we've talked about that. I said, I think that the downfall of the Celtics would be that they're tryhards, essentially. That they play through injuries too often. They do these things. I think a lot of guys do that. And I honestly think that maybe there is some credence, just because I don't think I've quite seen a fall off and pull up shooting from a star.
Yeah.
From outside of Damian Lillard last year, and Damian Lillard had an ab injury that we learned and got off-season surgery. There might be some legitimacy to that. But also, every time Tatum plays poorly, which he's done pretty much throughout his entire career for a stretch of the season, not to say he tends to get right by the playoffs. I was going to say, because by the time the playoffs come around, outside of the finals last year, he's had some really major series, really major games, whatever. But my point is that it's not always the injuries. Like, he's had ups and downs throughout his career. This, as you said, this might just kind of be who he is as a player, and you just hope that you can line up everything to get him the most right by the playoffs. And right now we're 3 weeks away, and now you might be saying to yourself, I hope that we can flip a switch, essentially, because that's where, like you said, you want to start seeing more of those good habits down the stretch.
I mean, I think what you're going to hear from, like, Bill has said this, a lot of Celtics fans have said this, and I think it would definitely help. Like, I think a lot of people want to see Derek White for Marcus Smart, just because, you know, Marcus Smart has had some like real diaper disaster. Like, he looks like he's shaving points longest yard style sometimes at the end of games. And I love Mark. I am like a number Rob one. Rob and Marcus are my two guys. Like, I can't say enough about, I will never like fully turn on Marcus, but like, he is, I think that probably would help the Celtics win some games, but I don't think that ultimately does anything for your championship upside, because Derek's also like not a creator. And also, like, by the way, Derek White, very quietly, also a huge reason, like, a lot of those series went on a long time in the like Bucks and Heat series. He had an awful playoffs, like, shooting the ball. Like, and he's been great this year. I wonder scouting wise, I if he plays like this in the playoffs, forget I ever said this, but Marcus Smart has shown up in the playoffs and has been like a dog grinder, done these sort of things, shown up when the lights are brightest. And I think I'm just going to say, who knows? This might be like a very stupid talking point. This might be like very talk radio, as like Russillo would say. But I definitely think switching out Derek White for Marcus Smart would have definitely helped us win a lot of regular season games,
which matters
down the stretch, which matters. Yep. And like, if they lose, it'll be the number 1 seed. So it's not totally pointless. I also can see why a coach would want to set a precedent that Marcus Smart is going to be the one closing games for us when there's important stuff going on, I guess is what I would say. Historically, that might be the wrong decision this year. It definitely seems like the wrong decision this year. Derek has been incredible. Russillo and Simmons were pretty dismissive of his all defense case. I don't know about that. It looks like an all defense guard to me. I mean, maybe he doesn't play enough minutes, but he's been incredible.
Derek White?
Yeah, Derek White,
the minutes thing hasn't really been a problem for the past 5 years or so. DeJounte Murray and Thibault both made it on despite being bench players 2 different seasons that played like 20, 25 minutes a game. And so far this year, he's playing 28 minutes a game. So I think that he certainly has a case. Also, he doesn't miss games. Is the other thing with Derek White. He's kind of an Iron Man in terms of the fact that he doesn't really miss games. The one thing I will say, and the reason why I brought up the Rob Williams and going smaller for certain lineups, whether it's White over Smart or White over Rob or whoever the functional big is in that series, I do think that offensively, I'm not sure how much Rob Williams is going to help or Marcus Smart necessarily is going to help compared to a Derek White in a Sixers and Bucks series, because one of the main advantages of having Giannis and Embiid, Giannis more so has been kind of the king roamer type guy that you can put on the baseline and kind of not have him necessarily worry as much about his guy. That is something that down the stretch of the last Sixers game when Rob actually played in that game. And I remember Bill specifically screaming for Derek White to play in that game because he was playing amazingly. He had a great game. And down the stretch of that game, they put Joel in the paint and they basically let him roam off to cut off the paint and any sort of rim attempts from the Celtics. And it actually stagnated the Celtics offense a lot down the stretch because the large majority of your offense is created on drive and kicks, on that ball movement that gets generated from the drives, which honestly, when I watched that Utah Jazz game the other night, I was laughing because I was watching and I was like, why do they keep doubling Tatum? Because I was like, at this point, like, make him beat you one-on-one. If he's been this inconsistent, like, you're surrendering wide open looks. You guys were generating good looks down the stretch of that game. Grant Williams got like 3 wide open corner threes, and then the last possession, he made an error driving directly at Walker Kessler. Like, it feels as though the offensive process was fine down the stretch. It was just guys weren't hitting their shots.
The Grant thing is funny because Grant's like such a doofus, but like that's like the 3rd game in a row where he's had for 3rd or 5th game where he's had like a pretty good game, but like had the big highlight bozo play at the end of the game.
Sure. Like he was really good in that game. Which is I was texting people being like, fucking spoiled Celtics fans getting mad. He has 25 points right now. Like, I was like, he's a good role player.
Well, Grant, I'm sorry, like Grant is not the problem with this. Russillo and Simmons seem to have kind of given that up and kind of understand that Marcus is the easier pickings now. But I guess, by the way, I'll also say this. It's also totally possible the Celtics still go to the finals. Like, they could also, just all this stuff I'm saying about Jason Tatum being doo-doo mode poo-poo, like, he can also just flip that switch and go back to being good, and the Celtics will probably be good again. So, like, bear that also in mind. I'm getting a little alarmed because it usually takes Tatum a little bit of time, and we're running out of season and out of runway for him to like be ready for like real games.
The games that I'm keeping my eyes on for the rest of the season for Jason Tatum and the Celtics are the big games against the Sixers and the Bucks.
Because those are the few games,
and because they actually both teams have stuff to play for. This is going to have an impact on seeding. While we've joked a lot about Mickey Mouse March and how you're going to see all these players going on crazy runs and RJ Barrett. So someone tagged me in an RJ Barrett post the other day and all this shit. Look, I'm happy for some of the young guys, the young teams that are performing well, but we see this every single March. But these bigger games, they all have indications for the standings, for the Sixers, for the Celtics, for the Bucks, for all the teams in the West that are fighting for their playoff lives. Like, we're going to see some really good basketball over the next few weeks, and I think that those major games are actually going to have some foreshadowing for what teams are going to look like in the playoffs. Now, they might not want to show everything, but there's certainly going to be more competitive games that we got in the first week of April than we've maybe ever had before.
I'm going to go one step further. I think these are like
championship determining.
This is what I'm saying. These are like.
Are you a Survivor person? Do you watch Survivor?
No, I don't.
Okay, I got back into the show recently, and there are moves that you make at with 10 people left that you're like, this is the move that will get me to the final three.
Yes.
That's what these games are essentially, because they could determine who's the 1 seed, and whoever gets the 1 seed has a massive advantage over the other teams.
I just, unless there is some sort of injury in the war that is going to be the Eastern Conference Finals, I really don't see a Western Conference team winning it this year. Like, KD to the Suns made me think that was possible. I can't get there. I just can't get there. And I think this is probably going to determine the 1 seed, which is probably going to determine the Eastern Conference, which I think is probably going to determine the championship. So these are some of the highest stakes regular season games you can get. I think these are more important than what's the most important regular season game you've ever seen? Probably the last day of the year, that Nuggets Wolves game to get in the playoffs.
Yeah, the fake playing game that Zach always talks about.
Yeah, that's probably the highest stakes regular season game. One of the highest. I would argue these are higher regular season games that are going,
because they're going to have an impact on the championship. It's not just hey, we're going to make it to the playoffs and then get crushed by the Rockets, which the Wolves did end up losing in 5 to the Rockets.
Right.
It was basically just it will be nice to compete and be in the playoffs versus hey, we're actually this is going to dictate. And right now Milwaukee's in the driver's seat. Sixers and Celtics are only 2 games back. And
which is crazy. Which
is crazy because that's the advantage that the Celtics get for starting hot, and the disadvantage that the Sixers get for starting slow is that because the Celtics had that insane hot start, because the Bucks had that insane hot start, I was saying from the jump of the year, it's going to be really hard to claw back in. Basically everything has been as close to perfect as you can get for the Sixers for about 2.5 months. Yeah. And it might not matter just because you can't start the year 12-12 and win your conference when the conference is this good. So that's just kind of the reality of the situation that they're in right now. But you know what? Win the big games, show up, or at least compete in them, and I'll be happy. I'm not really going to get too worried about that stuff right now. I think that there's so much that can change between now and the playoffs. So
Cavs still point differential. That's officially happened.
That's got to be fake. I like the Cavs chances in a Knicks series. I would go as far to say as if the Sixers or the Bucks get the 1 seed. Honestly, any of these teams gets the 1 seed. I think the Cavs could take a couple games off them. I think that team's talented enough to do some things
for sure.
I'm not afraid of them by any means. I'm not going into the playoffs really hope the Sixers don't get them in the second round. Whatever. I'm not looking at them as championship contenders. But the fact that they're the number 1 seed in net ranking still on Cleaning the Glass is kind of wild to me. I think that's a combination of they've been pretty consistent throughout the year. They haven't really been in a ton of lopsided games in one direction or the other. They did blow out the Sixers early in the season without James Harden. Right now they have a +6.1 net rating. It's close though at the top, dude. You go down to Denver, it's teams that are within two points per 100 possessions, which is nothing, of the number 1 net rating. You have Boston, Memphis, Philly, Milwaukee, and Denver. So you have 5 teams. And as Zach talked about on his last podcast, it's possible that this shit doesn't matter as much because of the fact that the West is wide open, because of the fact that guys are always in and out of the lineups. And last year and the year before, Milwaukee was the 3 seed and they won the title. Golden State was the 3 seed and they won the title. The large majority of the last 25 to 30 years, it's almost always been the 1 or the 2 seed. Those are the only 2-3 seeds that have gone on to win the title in the last like 25, 30 years. So like the tide could be shifting a little bit on the regular season success versus the postseason success. But let's get into the Russillo and Bill pod. Just a few things that we wanted to talk about. You really wanted to harp on this this intergenerational stuff.
So Bill had this whole spiel about basically he was calling the numbers Mickey Mouse, and we've talked about this, that this is kind of a Mickey Mouse season, but Bill did it in his like very Bill way that like a lot of old guys do. You saw Bob Ryen tweeting that the 3-point line was the invention of a businessman.
The Harlem Globetrotters.
The Harlem Globetrotters businessman, implies
triple parentheses, if you know what that means.
Just doing some casual anti-Semitism.
Yeah, exactly.
But the really what I think we're talking about, like, I think we all admit that, like, yeah, something is like definitely going on here. But then he's like going back to kind of like, rather than to like kind of acknowledge, all eras are a little bit different. You've got to like kind of take things in context of their eras, which is what he talked about. He then listed off like 1 billion centers. Like, you had Kareem and Wilt and like these guys who matter. But then like every other like iron-footed center who scored like 30 and 12. And it's like, you're proving your own point. Like center stats were Mickey Mouse back then.
They were
and that's like, that's because other positions just matter more now in today's NBA. And I think that's like the context, which makes what Embiid and Jokic do, I think, more impressive.
Exactly.
Like than like kind of what he was trying to like,
especially when you consider we're in the 3-point era where the game is played from the outside in versus the old era of basketball was inside out. Everything was played from within the post, and then everything came out of the post. Honestly, the last team that won a title playing even an inside out style was Hakeem and the Rockets. Like Shaq just dominated in the post. Duncan played in the high post a lot. The last team that really had that, the fact that Embiid and Jokic have kind of capitalized on the fact that the league went small. And it's something that Bill talked about on a recent podcast, and he was dead on with this analysis, which is that every team seems to think that they can mimic the Warriors. They did for years. Oh, we'll just go small, we'll go small. And really only a few teams have kind of been able to do that because no one has Draymond Green.
That's the thing. You need Draymond Green and you need Steph's insane gravity, which
exactly.
Two complete like historic outliers.
Yeah, exactly. And they played together to make everything work on offense and defense for the Warriors. And now, because of the fact that you had this essential market shift to playing smaller, playing with more space, playing with whatever, Jokic and Embiid have been able to dominate from the post because of the fact that every other team said, we're going to go smaller. And they've essentially completely reversed the fortune and made it so that them plus Giannis, who's also a 7-footer, are the 3 most dominant, at least in the regular season, players. And the intergenerational stuff was interesting to me because earlier in the season we both have admitted these stats are inflated. Of course, these stats are inflated.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
With the pace teams play at, with the efficiency, with the fouls that are called, the rule changes, everything.
Whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. Sure.
They're also in the 80s, by the way, before there were changes in rules and shit, the pace was crazy. Teams scored a ton of points. They said like, it was 15 guys shot more than 20 times a game. Well, if you go back to the 80s, it's like you look at it and it's like there were probably 15 guys that shot 18 and a half times a game. Maybe there's like an extra shot and a half, which, that matters over the course of a game, course of a season. But it's not like the game is very different, and we are breaking all these offensive records. But my point on this whole thing is that, like, earlier in the season when the Celtics were doing really well, Bill kept using the J stats as a way to say this is an all-time duo. Essentially, what he was saying was like the Celtics have the best duo in the league. And he was comparing their stats. He literally had an intro podcast where he compared their scoring stats to Shaq and Kobe, to KD and Curry, and all this shit. And now that the Celtics have struggled a little bit, and the Sixers and the Bucks are doing better, it's like, wait a minute, we should really look at these numbers. Yeah. And let's do an audit of these numbers. It's just convenient timing for me, really, which is like we all recognize.
Bill has switched to Drew Holiday as the best defender on the Bucks, which is hilarious.
No.
Very funny.
Not the best defender on the Bucks. The best defender in the NBA. Which, look,
he's such a sicko. What a pervert. I love him. I love him. Nobody knows how to like take an agenda and run with it. Like I kind of like Drew, I think, more than most people. And I was just like, oh my fucking God, I am gonna break my wrist doing the jerk off motion in the air.
No, Drew's really good, and Drew is incredibly important for what the Bucks do, and he's incredibly important as a defender on any team he's ever been on. He's always been one of the best guard defenders in the NBA. Yeah. But when we live in the era of, like, when you get to the playoffs, having the biggest advantage you can have is having a Draymond Green or a Giannis or someone that is just, like, exactly what we've always talked about. The switchable, versatile, like, what people project Evan Mobley to be.
Look, I mean, even Bam, like in certain
his value goes up a lot in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like Bam, that's kind of the secret of rat mode is Bam. I'm sorry. Like, you know, like that I wish I could call him fraudulent. He has games he no-shows on offense, which is a lot of fun. You get to do the registered Republican Bam Adebayo thing, but like
sometimes he gets crushed by James Wiseman.
Yeah. Was that what happened last night?
I watched. He was
James Wiseman playing like what? Because I am writing all.
I have that next on my list. I have it on my next on my list.
We'll talk about it in a little bit because that was another thing Bill brought up that I'm Bill mode. But anyway, I guess my thing with Bill's like intergenerational stats too is like, and credit to Russillo because he brought this up. We also don't talk about how those guys were also playing in insanely different circumstances. Like, if you put like OG Anunoby in a time machine and send him back to like the 50s, Wilt would have like 30 turnovers. I'm sorry, like there's no like
history books would be written about Tobias Harris.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because like the reason you can't compare eras is because they're fundamentally different. Like these guys grew up watching YouTube and like looking at like, you know, able to go to camps and like study craft and like all these other. Meanwhile, players like in the 50s had to go to the fucking general store to like buy the pump for their like basketball, and they're like practicing on fucking dirt. Like, like it's like you like literally cannot compare these things, you know, like guys were like smoking in the gym in the 50s.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to be honest. I'm not even sure Wilt Chamberlain was good at basketball. I think he was just the tallest and the most athletic. Yeah. And you were just like, wow, he's incredible because he's literally not a 6-foot milkman who literally.
Hashim Wilt would have just dominated in the.
Dude, James Wiseman in the 50s, we would have been like, This man made us change the rules of basketball, and he's like a fringe rotation player in the modern NBA. Like that's
if you could send current cooked Dwayne Dedman back, he would be dropping 70 like every night. Like,
we always say who because people bring this conversation up for the NCAA. Yeah. Like did you see the tweet the other day that was like, if you put Giannis on a 16 seed, would they win? And then I was like, dude, they would win every game by like 40.
Obviously,
like first off, a 16 seed just beat a 1 seed. Like 16 seeds are way better than they used to be.
Essentially, how the Bucks became good is that happened. Like they had like Jabari Parker on that fucking team. Like,
we have Giannis now. Like
we have Giannis.
I always think
now we're good. Like,
who would be the worst player you could put on the worst team? And they would, so like worst team in the tournament, worst 16 seed, right? Let's say the 16 seed that lost in the play-in game for the tournament, right?
Yeah.
Who's the worst player you could put on that team and then have them just cruise to a title still?
I think it's like the line of demarcation is somewhere around current this year Jordan Poole. Like
that's a good one.
Yeah, I think that's like right. It's like in that range. Like I wouldn't feel confident at that point because he could shoot him out of the game.
Yeah, true. It's a good point. Yeah, he could do either. Or although
him shooting 30% though is like
efficient for a college player. The guy who's going to be like the number 3 pick in the draft is 5 for 22 to start the tournament. Brandon Miller, like that's what we're talking about here. And look, it does get a little bit complicated because it's like Paolo Banchero is. It's hard to really figure out because like a year ago, Paolo Banchero was in this tournament. And he didn't even drag the number 1 seed to a title, right? And like you would say,
Coach K deserves the magazine. Coach K has been ruining generations of Duke prospects. The fact that the Jahlil Okafor team won the title just proves how evil that man is.
Of all the teams, the best pro was Tyus Jones. But because someone said like Christian Wood was a good one, I thought like you put Christian Wood on one of these teams, he's just dominating. Yeah. And then they were like, but like Paolo Banchero is better than Christian Wood, right? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, Paolo Banchero was on the team last year, and like, did he become that much better in a year? I'm like, first off, I think he probably did become much better getting into an NBA training program, playing against NBA pros, having a year under his belt, even just 1 year, compared to like I think we always joke, it's like. I think the real answer is probably a shot creating guard because it's either like a dominant big that like maybe a Christian Wood, a skilled big, or a shot creating guard like a Spencer Dinwiddie or a Jordan Poole or whoever.
Connecticut did this with Shabazz Napier. There's your proof right there. Like Gonzaga almost did it with Suggs, who's like not a shot creator at all. Like,
actually, as Will said in the comments, it's Boban. I mean, but then again, we just saw Zach Edey, who's basically new Boban, go out in the first round. Karis LeVert, another good one.
What do you mean? Zach Edey went out in the first round. What do you? Hold on. Wait, hold on. No.
Don't look at your DVR.
Okay. What?
What's on the tape?
Good. What's in the DVR?
Oh no!
Oh God!
Oh Jesus Christ! But yeah. So back to the Bill and Russillo stuff. The generational stuff is always just way too hard to compare in general. But as someone did point out to me. There is a complete contradiction that Bill he listens to the podcast regularly at fear the _ pointed out to me. How come when Devin Booker was on those Phoenix teams, it was always good stats, bad team guy? And then James Wiseman goes to the Pistons and they've literally won, I believe they've won 1 game since he got traded there. And he puts up these stats and it becomes, oh, well, Wiseman's back. He's a guy. But before it was always the shot creating guard, especially the hooper, was a good stats, bad team guy and it could never translate. And then now that it is the guy that I always was high on, he's very clearly going to be a good NBA player.
I can't. I mean, I'm going to be clear. I've watched precisely 0 of these Detroit games.
I've watched some.
I will tell you, I still feel extremely comfortable saying James Wiseman is not an NBA player. You could tell me he did the Kevin Love 30-30. I would not care. I'm sorry, he's not good. I mean, like I don't know. So
I just want to say. Mm-hmm. They're 1-13 in games that James Wiseman has played. So
they played 14 games since the Wiseman trade happened. Fuck.
Yes, got traded at the deadline. Now look, maybe Wiseman turns out to be, and I said this at the beginning of the year. Maybe he is, and I'm not putting all of this on James Wiseman. He's on a bad team. Like the Pistons are bad. They're trying to tank right now. I certainly watched enough last night that I was like. And it's kind of what I felt at the beginning of the season, like maybe he could be a backup big. Certainly has athleticism, size, all the things that we have talked about. I don't know how applicable his athleticism is to the modern NBA game. He also had a horrible play down the stretch where he had a rebound and dropped the ball that led to a Miami 3 because he has terrible hands, where he still has moments where I'm like, he is 22. He's barely played basketball for the last 4 years. You got to cut him some breaks because he certainly can do things at a level that is, I think that he can be a rotation player in the NBA. just because he was the third pick in the draft, I think that people are going to go one way or the other with their I'm sorry, the second pick of the draft. Jesus Christ. Just because he was the second pick of the draft and because he has these moments where he hit a big three last night and he's crashing the glass and he's scoring inside at will against Miami. Even though Detroit's offense was not good the entire game, there's going to be a section of people, whether it's Warriors fans that want to say they were right pre-draft, Wiseman people. Also, I've noticed a large section of people on Twitter who are just complete contrarians and are like, no, Wiseman's going to be good because
I have no idea what that people. I would never do anything like that. Disgusting, repulsive. I will never be a James Wiseman contrarian. That is some sicko shit. I'm sorry. Like,
well,
you
look,
need to find Jesus at that point.
Let's see what he looks like if the Pistons are good next year, because in a winning context is what I've always struggled to see where Wiseman fits. On a bad team, I know he can play. Like, I know that he can play on a team where you just feed him the ball and you let him get the reps and maybe he can turn into an NBA center one day. But is James Wiseman ever going to be good enough that you can run an offense through him? No. Which is kind of part of the reason why that archetype of big doesn't have as much of an appeal as it previously did. Now, can he
healthy? Healthy Rob Williams is probably exactly what you want James Wiseman to be, right? Like, that's like probably the highest possible thing
on a winning team. Sure.
And that's like a $10 million play. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a reason. I love Rob. I think that, his ceiling kind of changes championship level odds, but there's a lot more that goes into team building that is more important than that. You've got to go a ways down the checklist before you get to like that play.
Vertical spacing, rim protecting big, which, look, I don't even know if Wiseman can do these things on a high level. Yeah. He's certainly shown enough in the games that I've watched that I'm like, look, maybe the trade doesn't end up aging as poorly as I thought it would. I still don't understand why you would block Jalen Duren and his development because you just spent a lottery pick on him. Didn't really make any sense to me. Still doesn't really make any sense to me. But I think that he has certainly shown enough. But I want to see it in meaningful games is what it comes down to. Is like, what does he look like when everyone's healthy next year? If they hit on another draft pick, which I don't even know if they've necessarily hit super high on a draft pick yet, to be honest. But right now it's a lot of victory lapping from people in games that mean nothing. And honestly, the fact that Detroit's hung with a few teams gives me a little bit of optimism about some of their younger guys, but I still want to see it in a winning context, what James Wiseman can bring, because I'm still skeptical just about that archetype of big in the modern NBA beyond what you just described, which I don't even think offensively and defensively he's going to reach that level of effectiveness. So we'll see. Look, maybe I'm totally wrong and Wiseman turns out to be totally fine, but I'm going to be skeptical until the games mean something. So, which has always been Bill's thing. Good stats, bad team guy. Like we have to. The application has to be across the board here.
Yeah,
it's certainly shown enough, but
it's like a win. It's so weird because it's like in some ways it's like a win prophecy. I think this is kind of a sunk cost thing where like you start out trusting the Warriors infrastructure, and if you're someone who like staked your claim on like, okay, 2 timelines, this is brilliant. This is a genius franchise. They're so smart. Like, your options are, okay, this is kind of a dumb franchise who's just gotten like really lucky with very specifically 2 draft picks. Or is this, or you can say, oh, they made a mistake here and they gave up too early on their brilliant plan that was genius the whole time. And
well, that's the thing, is that Bill kind of plays both sides with it, where he goes, well, obviously he's very talented and good, and they did give up on him too early, but also he would have never fit on that team. And it's like, you mean a team that won the championship last year?
Did you? Well, but this is the thing, why I think it's the Warriors thing is because did you listen later? They did a retradables. They did their second Celtics trade on retradables, which is very funny.
The only 2 trades he's done.
No, there's a third. They did the Nets trade.
Oh, okay.
They did the Nets Damian Lillard trade, I think, or something. Okay. But anyway, so they did their retradables for this week, and it was the fucking Joe Johnson trade for like Tony Delk and Rodney Ryder, whoever it was. But Bill was trying to explain what giving up on Joe Johnson was like at that point in his career. And his first instinct was to say Kuminga, which is so fucking funny. Like, and that just shows that I think because Bill is kind of wowed by the Warrior. I think he's kind of been snookered by like the Warriors' whole thing, which is honestly, I'm sorry, it kind of parallels the same Silicon Valley fucking nonsense where you happen to be in the right place at the right time. But,
sure.
We have the American myth making where, nothing can be an accident. It's got to be somebody did something right.
Exactly. No, it can't just be historical luck.
Yeah, you can't just be lucky. So you've got to.
It can't just be that you went to the franchise and, when you almost traded Steph Curry to the Bucks, you can't have gotten lucky that you traded Monta Ellis instead. And also you didn't even draft Steph Curry, who has made your entire franchise.
How about this? How about David Kahn drafted Johnny Flynn and that
Ricky Rubio, 2 point guards. I mean, look, yeah. Ricky Rubio, all things considered, was a very good prospect at that draft. But like, you drafted 2 point guards in the other 2 point guards that went around them were James Harden and Steph Curry. And even later, we got Drew Holiday. I'm pretty sure in the same draft. There were 3 guards in the top 20 of that draft that are going to make the Hall of Fame, and you took Ricky Rubio and Johnny Flynn.
Like I really don't. I don't know. I guess just my thing is I think Bill is trying. Like I think Bill and a lot of people. I think where this Wiseman stuff is kind of coming from is like, especially because Bill is a manager. You want to believe in managers and what managers are doing. And, like the Warriors have by definition been like the model of success in the NBA for at least the last 10 years. So
the brain trust,
like you have to, if you want to credit that to management and not the employees, you've got to believe that they're smart. And I think that this was very much a baby. The 2 timelines thing was very much a baby of the brain trust. And everyone who I actually respect their opinion knew this was fucking stupid. And they did it anyway. So and you have to kind of like retrofit that. So
what's funny is now I remember last year watching and everyone was like, well, they got it right. And I'm like, we just watched Steph Curry like Hercules carry them to a championship.
Yeah.
What does this have to do with James Wiseman and Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga? Like those were the 2 timelines.
LaMelo Ball in that fucking, they would have beat the Celtics in 4 if LaMelo Ball were out there. Like, I'm sorry. Like,
the Warriors have hit on 1 pick since the Obama administration, and they gave him a horrible contract, Jordan Poole.
Yeah.
I mean, like, at a certain point, we have to just realize, hey, maybe this has actually been carried by a generational player and a generational defensive player. So that's kind of what the reality of this is. And now we have to figure out the Wiseman thing next, because they couldn't have possibly done anything wrong like they have continuously over and over, and just had the widest margin of error possible because they have Steph Curry. Okay, so let's get into, do you want to do the swing players? We want to run through the swing players from each team.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
right.
We can.
So we'll do I have a list here of players that are basically every single team that I think can win a playoff series is what I said contender in the title, but it's really any team that can win a playoff series. I have the swing player for each team. I want to see if you agree with the players that I pick for each team. Okay. So we'll start with the Bucks, number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Middleton's pretty obviously the swing player for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is. I think if he is not himself, they might be able to still win a championship, but it stops being in their hands, I guess is what I'll say. Like,
they have to win it on the strength of the best defense we've ever seen, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, you still have like Giannis, but I think that the Sixers and Celtics, or at least the Celtics hypothetically, like there's at least enough good there that like you are going to need some shit to go right. Like you're not
close games down the stretch.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, I would agree.
That's what he did for them 2 years ago. Okay. So yeah. Chris Middleton's our guy for the Bucks. I think that we agree on that. The other guy that you could maybe make the argument is like one of the later rotation players, but like I think they have enough guys that they can kind of plug and play based on matchup.
Yeah.
The Sixers, I actually have Tyrese Maxey for the Sixers.
That's what I thought. That's actually what I had too. So because I think Maxey, I'm interested to see Maxey, like playoff Maxey in like a real high leverage situation where like Embiid's face is like not broken. And can he survive on defense? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, can he prevent himself from being just a total liability? Because I think if he can credibly like stay out there, if he can, I don't know if I'm trusting Doc to like scheme away and like, and I don't know. I guess I don't watch enough Sixers. You guys don't really like scram switch or do anything like that, right? Like there's not like trying to like, if Maxey gets caught in a bad matchup, you guys don't try and like scram switch guys.
I mean, we don't really do any sort of like pre-switching or anything like that. Yeah. I will say we really only switch heavily when it's the non-Embiid minutes. We will switch 1 through 4 just due to Harden not wanting to like fight over screens and being, but honestly, like I haven't really been concerned with Maxey on switching. I actually think that if because he has long enough arms and he's strong enough that he can contest a lot of shit, it's really been the off-ball stuff that I've been more worried about with him. Like he blows rotations a ton. He has trouble fighting through screens. Like I actually think that the off-ball stuff is where I think that if there's a team that's smart enough, that's like, hey, let's just run Maxey through a ton of screens, get the entire defense into rotation and all fucked up, and we'll get open shots. Is where I think that would be the strategy for a team in a series against the Sixers. Like honestly, Jimmy Butler targeted Maxey a lot on switches last year. He's Jimmy Butler. He's going to score on pretty much anyone. He drew a ton of fouls on Maxey, but I thought that Maxey on the whole was fine. I didn't really think that it lost us the series last year. I'm curious to see if he can hold up in a Celtics series. I know he can hold up in a Bucks series. I know he can hold up in mainly any other series. I'm interested to see how he looks against teams that have shot creating guards and wings like the Celtics and Cavs, who can maybe run him through a ton of screens, get him completely out of the play, or just kind of target him over and over. So Maxey is the guy there. I think that if Maxey's on a heater like he was for a stretch of the playoffs last year, it can make the Sixers offense pretty unstoppable. If he is playing like he did in the Celtics games this year, that's where it becomes more of an issue, where he just kind of struggles with, their athleticism and their size, and he can't really, contribute in the way that you expect him to. So for the Celtics, I have written down here, I have Rob Williams as the swing piece.
I think that's pretty obvious. If you're not putting Jason Tatum,
I was going to say, yeah. Sixers are currently clamping the Bulls. Let's go. So I think that, they're only up 5 though, Jonathan. So I thought they were up more. But the Rob Williams one is definitely, I think the reason why Rob is kind of similar to what we talked about earlier about just giving you another look for certain matchups. Like, oh shit, there's a certain matchup like in a Cavs series. I think Rob would be really effective because they play double bigs. You can then have multiple bigs that you can throw out there for rebounding purposes. It would be big.
Healthy Rob also just changes everything because like Scal, going back to like Scal and Lowe's thing, I do think Scal's like not totally wrong about like, the Celtics offense, not that the players themselves, but that the offense can be kind of lazy because it's like, if you want just rise up and want to take a shot, Rob makes you play more structured, which like it doesn't seem like he would help the offense because it's like, oh, the spacing, it's cluttered, it's like shitty. But he does because he gives real structure to the offense and he kind of makes guys play in a real like setting. Like, you do screen, like Rob does screen for you. He does roll. He's not just like popping, because the thing with Al Horford and like all of their small guards, those guys, and Grant Williams, those guys all fan out, and then it's like, oh, me, a guy, paint, let's cook. It's time, here it comes. Jason Tatum cooking. I'm the Ratatouille guy without the rat in the hat. That is what I'm cooking. I'm cooking nothing. So like that's the bullshit that is, dooming the Celtics. And I think to what Zach is talking about and what I'm talking about when I talk about Rob being more essential to the offense is because it makes them play more like a normal team, and they are a very good team when they play normal. But removing Rob just creates diaper mode. Like, it creates more turnover. Like, it creates more rebound opportunities. Like, it kind of makes guys get into like, Kobe ball bullshit that just does not work in today's NBA. Like, so I just,
I also think that like the one thing that the Celtics have in their back pocket at all times they can go to is the 5-out offense.
Mm-hmm.
If Rob is out there, you're not going to go 5 out, but you can have that sense of normalcy in the offense, and then you can always pivot to the 5-out, which, as we've seen throughout the playoffs, when you have the option to go to that, whether it was like the Mavericks last year in the playoffs, the Clippers 2 years ago against the Jazz, when you have the option to go to the 5-out offense, and it's more of a curveball, it's not your bread and butter, it's something that you can pivot to, it can actually be super effective in certain matchups, and it's always a nice thing to have. So basically all Rob gives you is just different looks that you can throw at teams. And for the Cavs, so the Cavs is the next team I had written down here. I have Isaac Okoro as my swing guy, but I think it should be Isaac Okoro or whoever the fifth starter is, because Sixers and Cavs played again recently. They did not have Jared Allen in this game, but they had Jared Allen in the previous game. And when the Sixers and the Cavs have been relatively healthy going against each other, it's every time we're going to let Mobley shoot, we're going to let Okoro shoot, and we're going to live with the results. We're going to pack the paint. We're going to make it so that they kind of have to beat us with their shooting. And I don't know how many times we have to see this, but if I'm JB Bickerstaff, I honestly think I would start Karis LeVert over Isaac Okoro now. I think that LeVert is a more capable. I know I'm very biased here because he's literally been incredible against the Sixers this year. He's shooting literally like 65 or 70% from the field against the Sixers this year. But also defensively, he's athletic enough that he can stay on ball with guys even like Harden. And he's had huge games against the Celtics. I actually can't believe I'm saying this, but I think that they should just move him to full-time starter and ramp his minutes up to, like, for a playoff series, like 35 minutes a game, as opposed to Okoro, because it gives you more ball handling, it gives you more shooting, and it gives you look, he's not as good defensively as Okoro, but I don't think that the gap is big enough that you can really justify tanking your entire half-court offense and fucking up all your spacing in order to kind of whatever idea you have behind Okoro. I don't think that Okoro is the strength of the defense. I think the bigs are the strength of the defense. So I'm very much like whoever that fifth starter is, it's probably going to be Isaac Okoro, but I think it should be Karis LeVert.
So I think we have our first disagreement. I actually had Evan Mobley here.
Mobley, okay.
Yeah, I actually think Mobley is the X factor because I don't think everyone looks at that. I think everyone looks at that fifth spot because it's like the other like starter guy, and everyone sees that as the one that's going to sink them. But I think that for the Cavs to like have real playoff equity, I don't think that's going to be done on the back of their fifth starter guy. Like, I don't think any of those guys have the upside, even LeVert, that to like kind of really meaningfully change like a playoff series. Like, I think if the Cavs make noise in the playoffs, like if they win their second round seed, if they beat the RJ Barrettless Knicks and the whoever else they play, I think it's going to be on the back of Evan Mobley taking like a kind of a mini leap and kind of imposing himself as like becoming sort of a guy a little bit. Is that very likely? I don't think so, which is why I don't think the Cavs are, real threats in the playoffs this year, despite their like try hard things. But I think if the Cavs are going to be good, I think it's going to come from Mobley, if that makes sense. And that's kind of why I see him as the swing piece.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, mostly because the strength of their team is built on their top four guys. And I have confidence that Mitchell's going to be great in the playoffs. I have confidence that Jared Allen's going to do his job in the playoffs. I have confidence that Darius Garland is going to do his job in the playoffs. I'm more skeptical of Mobley. Every time I watch him, I'm like, the stats are good, and defensively, he is very, very good. I mean, he's not going to go up against Joel Embiid in any sort of matchup. That will be Jared Allen's assignment. It's not his fault that he can't guard Joel Embiid. He's half his size. Like, I don't expect him to be able to do that. In other matchups, he's been absolutely fantastic defensively. I think he can unlock a lot of things for them when they get to the playoffs. Offensively, I still have a lot of question marks about who he is as a player. I don't know why he shoots threes. That's the main reason why I would just move Okoro from the starting lineup. You can't have 3 non-shooters out there. You might be able to survive with 2, but like, dude, like Mobley shoots like 20% from 3, and he just kept bricking and bricking and bricking in the Sixers game. And I was like, why are they doing this? Like, this is terrible. He's not going to automatically become a 40% three-point shooter by the playoffs. Like, if anything, I would just say try to get him out of situations where he has to be a spot-up guy. Try to get him involved more in the offense. He's shooting 21% from 3 on the season. And he shoots 1.3 a game. He shouldn't be shooting threes at all, and he should be more functioning as a big split-up Allen and him as much as possible and try to make it so that there is more spacing on the court, and that might be able to unlock a part of his offensive game because I feel like it's really stagnating his offensive growth and development by just making him into a spot-up shooter because he's not good at that, and he's not going to be good at that at least this year.
And also, like, to that point, I mean, I don't know. I just really trust Darius Garland too.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I just as a playmaker to kind of like find guys too. Like let Darius Garland do some heavy lifting. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like he's kind of really taken a back seat and like on this Cavs team, like and really shrunk down his role. Like you said, I think staggering those guys a little bit more, like you don't have to play hyper big. Like you have Darius Garland to kind of make some of this stuff work. I would run things through him like even more often.
So it's funny you bring that up because I actually think one of the reasons why I could see the Cavs winning a series and potentially maybe upsetting someone in the second round. I don't think they will, but maybe is because they're going to have an elite shot creating guard on the court at all times in the playoffs, assuming that they stagger correctly. And they're going to have, I don't know if Mobley can anchor a defense. I don't think he can at this point in his career, but there's at least a shot you could have 2 centers that can anchor a defense. It's everyone else that's going to be a question mark for me. And they just don't have enough shooting right now. They don't have enough offensive creation outside of those guys to be able to make up for that. But
I think it's going to be like a pretty interesting like coaching chess match. I think the Bucks probably win in 5 in that series, but I do think those matchups are going to be like pretty interesting, and I do think those games are going to be like pretty close.
Same.
Who's their third big on the Cavs? Who's like?
I mean, they go smaller a lot, and they put Mobley at the 5. They have Robin Lopez on the roster, but like he doesn't really play that much. Like I mean, like their third big is normally put Mobley at the 5 and then go smaller. And then since Kevin Love's gone, who were they even playing last game? I guess it was like, can someone in the comments tell us? I can't even remember.
That's so weird. By the way, I'm glad you brought up Robin Lopez. Like, he's not like, am I crazy or is he like not bad and just like he just went to Orlando that had like a billion guys that were big and like just stopped playing. So now he's like just kind of a bench riding guy, but like he was good the last time we saw him, right? Am I making that up?
I mean, he's kind of been like a fringe backup big for a few years. He's got a little bit worse with age, I would say. I mean, the last time that he was regularly a backup big, if I remember correctly, was on that Bucks team.
Oh man, I forgot that he was on that team
for 1 year. It wasn't at the bubble year. Yeah, I think he was on the Bucks for the bubble year. I guess so.
I guess it's Lamar Steve. I forgot they got Danny Green too. That's kind of a fun X factor.
Sometimes they go really small and they put Diakite at small ball 5, but like he's way too small to play in a real playoff series at the 5. Like
6'9", 228. Yikes.
Yeah, I don't think that he's more of a wing than he plays big, but I think that's more out of necessity. But yeah, so I'm not super confident about beyond those guys, but if both those guys are healthy, they'll have one of the bigs on at all times and they'll have one of the guards on at all times. So that definitely makes it makes the lineups a little bit interesting at least. But the 2s, 3s, and 4s on those teams, I just think their wings are so bad. When I watched that game, I was like, oh man, this wing production is just so terrible for what you need to win in the playoffs. All right. So for the Knicks, I think we all know who this is going to be, right? I want to hear who you think I picked.
Did you pick RJ Barrett?
Yeah. I picked RJ Barrett because it's like they only really have one weak link in their rotation. And he's been playing better recently, but he's, as we've talked about before, of everyone in the rotation, he's certainly the weak link. If they want to win a playoff series, they're either going to have RJ Barrett. They might be able to get away with benching RJ Barrett.
If RJ Barrett gets mono, you need to pound the Knicks championship odds. Like, this is if he's in the Sam Darnold graphic, like out mononucleosis, the point, like
it might be over for the rest of the league.
Yeah, the rest of the league. The Josh Hart Knicks don't lose. I'm sorry.
I know. What are they, 12-3 or some shit since they got him?
Absurd. Like, they're, if they, I'm very glad the season isn't longer. They might
be able to figure some shit out.
Nervous about them catching the Celtics. Like,
well, right now, I actually my not my comp, I should say, that was someone else's comp, but I feel like they are the pre-Kawhi Raptors and the pre-Jimmy Heat, in that they play really well together as a unit. They're going to win a ton of regular season games. When you get, and they're just going to be competitive, like the Heat on the lower end of like, they just got to compete and do whatever to kind of remain relevant so that they can stay on the radar for stars. Mm-hmm. The Raptors more in the higher end of like, they're going to win like 50 or 60 games in a regular season. They're probably going to get smoked at the higher levels of the playoffs when they run into true superstars. Like if they play the Bucks in the second round, they play Giannis, they'll probably get fucking smoked. But they're in a good position now that like, they just need one guy that wants to go there, and then they become real contenders. And they're kind of set up nicely. If they had not signed that RJ Barrett contract, I'd like them even better moving forward. But for now, they're too far away. And then the last team I had in the East, and I'm not doing this out of I'm not doing the Bill thing where I'm actually afraid of this team. But in a world where you have Jimmy Butler on your team, you have to give the Heat at least a very small chance to win a playoff series. I think it would take them jumping all the way up to the 5 seed to honestly do it, because I don't see them beating the Sixers, the Celtics, or the Bucks.
No.
But you have to give them at least a little bit of respect just because of Jimmy. And my swing piece for them was literally just Kevin Love or any of their shooters, because they just need shooting is really the thing that has become a massive issue for them this year. All of their shooters have fell off a cliff. If their shooters can get back to being even somewhat normal, they would have a fighter's chance in a playoff series just because of Bam's defense and Jimmy's offense.
I had Max Strus for that exact reason, because I think gives them the best. I think he has the best chance to like kind of return to form, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, so, I mean, I don't know.
And he's not going to get played off the court defensively like Duncan Robinson.
Yeah. Everyone says that like he's like a terrible defender. I've never seen that in like, I don't know, maybe because I'm just watching the Celtics. No, Strus.
No, Strus is a fine defender.
Yeah, I've like heard people say that like Strus is like a bad defender. I'm like, he fucking competes. Like, and that's like all you need is like a small guard. I mean, I don't know.
That for a team that lacks shooting so much, they just need guys that can stay on the court, because like they just don't have the offensive creation to really be able to get away with not playing shooters of that level. And defensively, I think he's fine. I think from what I've heard, he's had like a down year, but like I still think that if the shooting was good enough, it wouldn't really matter. Okay, so let's go to the West. I have a few teams written here. I have the Nuggets, obviously. For me, the swing piece for them is, I don't know if I should pick. I picked Thomas Bryant because I was low on that trade when they made it. I was like, Thomas Bryant's like the worst big defender in the NBA, maybe. Like, I could see him playing in the regular season. I can't see him playing in the playoffs. But they seem to be rolling into the playoffs with him as their main backup big. Zeke Naji is a kind of total opposite problem, where defensively he's good, but offensively he can't really stay on the court. So it's either Thomas Bryant or Zeke Naji or someone that can survive in these non-Jokic minutes, because I think that there's a chance that if Jokic isn't on another fucking level in the playoffs, where he's literally like making it so that they're up like 15 points every time he goes out, I think it's a very good possibility that they're doing what it's the 2018-2019 Sixers, where the second Embiid goes to the bench, they're just bleeding points and they can't compete with the best playoff teams because they just don't have an option. I would honestly go small if I were them. I'd put Aaron Gordon at the 5 and put shooting all around it and say, fuck it. let's just try to win this way because we're not going to be able to stop
benching
anyone.
Benching Jokic.
Putting Jokic on a minutes restriction so his defense can't hurt you too much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, using Jokic as a decoy, like where you make them keep their good center on the bench, thinking you're going to bring Jokic back in, but no, it's too late. It's too late. We're getting our crunch time guys out there. So.
Oh my god! Oh, I stopped paying attention, and the Sixers are down 7 now. So great. All right.
Do you think if the Nuggets traded Jokic, so they have the Aaron Gordon at the 5, Porter at the 4, KCP, Murray, Bruce Brown, and they just like traded that team? Is that team like dramatically different in the West? Like in the playoffs,
maybe a little bit.
I don't know.
I'm just asking questions.
I'm just asking questions. Like, are you that much more confident in the Jokic version of that team than the non-Jokic version of that team?
Certainly not.
Bet your life on.
Yeah, the numbers show that the Nuggets are very good without Jokic on the court. So I think that I would.
Well, yeah, because they always play like fucking DeAndre Jordan or something. Because they're doing a false flag. They are like. Yeah.
Well, I didn't like the Thomas Bryant trade, but that was not the objective of the Thomas Bryant trade. If we think about it.
that also was a Gladio stay behind operation. Like this is the deep state. Like we are the Nuggets are a deep state operation for MVPs. I'm sorry. Like this is.
It's not going to work this time, folks.
No.
Unless Joel Embiid loses to the Bulls for the first time in his career, that might be the last dagger that could take down his case.
Daryl Morey is Nixon in this analogy. Like, he's come to
Bill is Frost.
Yeah, he did enjoy that part of the deep state, but now he's turned on them and they're having a secret war behind. He's going into back rooms with his Kissinger, Haralabob, and they're talking about Daryl, no, don't say that on the tapes.
Parody satire. Yes. Yeah. Shout out Haralabob. I hope he's doing well.
Yeah,
he's had a great few weeks.
Russillo said that he always thinks twice when Haralabob says something because he's such a smart guy. I'm like,
let's go. Just like Ennis Freedom.
Yeah, he's such. I can't believe Russillo. I had to like run that back because like normally the sickos have like listened to like Bill's pod like 12 times before like we've woken up and I've gotten like tagged in like 7 of them. I couldn't believe no one had sent that to me. Like that like he was out here saying that you normally agree with what Ennis Freedom is saying.
Always.
Because you don't like LeBron. That's such a weird thing to say. Like. Yeah. That is like such a weird thing to say.
Look, I don't like LeBron, so geopolitically, I stand with Ennis Freedom.
What got freedom in his name? Is that like China is bad? Is that like what?
I don't even know what he was trying to say.
I have no idea what he was like. I can't speak Republican like you know, so like I don't know what he meant by that.
Yeah, Russillo has been speaking in code since like the 90s. So
yeah. That's what happens when you grow up in liberal Massachusetts and you've got all these teachers and professors trying to give you the woke mind virus.
Exactly. Well, maybe one day he can turn Massachusetts red, you know, from the communist red that it is right now.
This is why his kindergarten teacher fiance turned him down because she got the woke vine virus. Russillo has lost so much to no idea. She had pink hair when she turned him down. That's what happened.
2002.
2002. She had the first ever case of the woke vine virus.
All right, let's
God bless Russillo, the most Gen X man to ever live. He rules, dude. I mean that he rules.
Let's transition to talk about the Sacramento Kings for a little bit. Okay. I just had Sabonis for mine. Can he not die defensively? I am skeptical. I don't really know who else would be a swing piece for them. Maybe Kevin Huerter with the shooting.
Yeah. I think it's hard to like put your finger on a swing piece for them because like I guess it would like kind of have to be some, because I think it's just the shooting in general. Like if
Yeah.
the shooting deserts them, I think that's how they lose. Am I crazy for thinking this is like everyone's talking about like defenses and like tightening up and like they're really fucking good, like scoring the ball. I don't know. Like maybe I'm a fool, but like I would obviously would not think this if they were in the East. Like I think they would get curb stomped by any of the top 3 teams, even my deficient Boston Celtics. But like it's the West, man. Like I don't know. Like really, you're like sure the Grizzlies are gonna take advantage and score on them at will? Like I don't know.
Well, that's the question. Is like how come we talked about the Grizzlies so high last year when they're essentially the opposite of the Kings? Where I know the Kings defense is a little bit worse than the Grizzlies offense, but a lot of the Grizzlies offense is built on transition stuff, which tends to not be as effective in the playoffs. So. Like, I think the Kings do have, like, a bottom 5 defense, which part of it is, I think, the pace that they play at, because it's kind of like, hey, look, we know we're going to get it back on the other end. So there might be a little bit of that going into it as well. I don't know. It's hard for me to really analyze. I just want the playoffs to get here so I can see what it looks like in a series against a real team that can, like, make adjustments throughout a series, too. Like, that's really where it's going to get interesting to me. Because, I don't know. I'm kind of with you in that, like, if you are really elite on one end, we're not talking about winning the title. We're talking about winning some playoff series. Like, there have been teams that have gotten far with bad defenses.
Against like a deficient field. Like, like the Atlanta Hawks were not like a lockdown defensive team.
Yeah.
When they made the conference finals.
They just happened to go up against the Sixers and the Knicks, which is what kind of the Kings need to hope for, is that they get a break. They get a break, and it might go in their direction. Yeah.
Yeah, like luckily there's no teams whose like star player has had like very high profile mental health challenges that they might see in round 1 or 2. Like so yeah, I guess this is kind of a crazy thing. There's no way that'll happen. Oh wait.
Anyway, the Grizzlies were next on my list.
Okay, well, right off the Kings at your own. I don't know. I think people have been like talking shit all.
We were for like 3 months.
Listen back. I have never.
You did say they're going to beat the Grizzlies. To be fair, yeah.
I did. I have been. That's going to be a clip, by the way. Now, did I think that game would happen in the play-in? Yes. Is it going to happen in a series though? Let's go.
Possibly in the second round, which would be incredible. Okay, so for the Grizzlies, I had Steven Adams as my swing piece because right now they've been missing him. They've kind of figured some things out. They've been better recently, but Ja's also not playing. I didn't put Ja as my swing piece because it sounds like he's going to come back this week, and I think he's going to end up playing. And I don't know. It's hard for me to see Ja's play being so detrimental that it holds them back in a playoff series. But can Steven Adams stay on the court is the big thing for me. Because if he can stay on the court in these matchups, I wonder how he looks in a Kings matchup. I wonder how he looks in a last year was Minnesota that played him off the court. I wonder how they're obviously a different team this year, but I wonder how he looks in some of these matchups that are going up against these like high power, super, like he honestly didn't play bad in the Warrior series last year, which makes me believe he might be able to hang on the court and give them some sort of size and like advantage inside. But yeah, so Steven Adams was my swing piece.
We were off by a little bit here, but same like kind of general idea. I went with Jaren Jackson, which maybe is not, because he is like one of their 1 or 2 best players. But I think the Brandon Clark injury just makes his foul issues pop that much harder, and especially with Steven Adams having some of the troubles we say on the court, it's going to be really important for the Grizzlies' hopes for him to play a lot of minutes. And if he gets in foul trouble, and that's probably going to happen in a game or 2, and Grizzlies fans are going to look around and go, "This is bullshit!" Like, man, what the fuck? Well, what was happening all year? I'm sorry. Like, this is, and it's in the playoffs. So I don't know. Like, if he can do that, they do have a lot of upside if he can do that. But I just think the Brandon Clark injury makes that so much more important. They don't have that same safety net they had, and with Steven Adams banged up and already, I agree with what you said. Like, I think he's been better. And I think that, all this stuff happens, but I think they're going to have trouble going small. They don't really have a lot of 4-5 size, like kind of on the roster. That's like,
it's basically
playable,
Xavier Tillman is like the only guy that they really have the option. Unless you go super small at the 4, like you put like,
and then I guess you could go to like David Roddy, but he's like not an NBA player yet.
David Roddy.
Yeah, David Roddy. And they're gonna put David Roddy out there. Like, come on, man. I don't. Kevin.
Dude, did you see that Verno had NLE, the rapper NLE Choppa on his show today, whose biggest song is literally just about fucking. I was like, this is his biggest song, NLE Choppa, if you don't know who he is. His biggest song is called Slut Me Out. And I was like, how is this not a ball bit? That Verno had NLE Choppa on, dude. I think he is from Memphis, which is why he was on the show.
Oh my god. Oh, that's so funny.
Kevin, this guy, he's got a freaking song called Slut Me Out.
Slut Me Out. Kevin, now look, you play guitar, so you know a thing or two about getting slutted out. I can't. I'm just trying to think about like what's like even fun, like what's like an even funnier like version, like if like just we go back and like, oh, that was like kind of a funny one-off. He did that because he's like in Memphis, and then it's like, my next guest, I'm gonna bring on Chief Keef, the king of the old block. Like, huh? Now, Chief, we got a Chicago election going on. What do you have to say about that? Where are we at with drill rap? Like, what do you think about that? He just does a hard hip hop pivot.
He has Chief Keef on to talk about Mayor Lightfoot. Losing
she's out of here.
She's old news.
She's old news. That's great. And then he like gets Chief Keef like confused with like Chance the Rapper, and he's like asking him like why he loves his wife so much.
That's why I was like, okay, so of course that guy being from Memphis makes a little bit of sense, but I was like, I could not imagine in my wildest dreams Chris Vernon and NLE Choppa being. NLE Choppa is also 20 years old. So it's like a 20-year-old guy who made a song called "Slut Me Out." It's amazing. It was too good to be a bit. Yeah. Like it was.
Well, you wait till next week on The Void when KOC interviews 6ix9ine.
He has Lil Pump on so they can talk about their shared politics.
Oh my god!
They're just watching Andrew Tate clips the entire time.
What do you think? God, I gotta say, like, it would be like.
Don't say anything I have to edit out.
Okay. I'm just gonna say it would be like very funny if like KOC started like just started his own like tape breakdown pod. Like it's literally him and J. Kyle Mann, but like talking about like different manosphere guys and like what their upside is.
Prospects.
Yeah, it's just exactly like going off like because now who's gonna fill the hole left by Andrew Tate now that he's in prison?
Aiden Ross. He's got potential. He's the dumbest man alive.
He's on the come up.
He's already beefing with leftists. All right, let's run through the last few here so we can get out of here. Yeah. Suns, I had Josh Okogie or pretty much anyone in that fifth starter spot again.
Yeah,
can they make
Torrey
enough shots?
Craig,
Whoever. Pick a guy. Okogie. Yeah. I think that one's pretty obvious. Although maybe Chris Paul being alive is another swing piece for them. Just being an alive human being. Wiggins for the Warriors. I mean, if Wiggins plays, they can win a series. If Wiggins doesn't play, they can't win a series. Kind of just comes down to that for me.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised we haven't, outside of Twitter, I'm kind of surprised we haven't had the Stephen A. Smith monologue about, now look, about pretending to be respectful of the Wiggins situation and then being like, why don't we know? Yeah, exactly.
Well, there was a random guy on TikTok. I don't know if you saw that, but everyone was just like, first off, this guy was like, as someone else put it out, he was like in a Burger King. And he was like just talking. He's what I would call part of, speaking of Andrew Tate, he was part of can you believe what these women are doing TikTok.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna leave it at that. It's out there if you want to see it. I don't believe any of it. I'm not saying it's true. But what I'm saying is that we have nothing on this Andrew Wiggins situation, and until we have a legit reporter come out with something, don't believe anything that you hear out there. It's probably fake bullshit, and no one really knows what's going on. And I'm just like, let's just respect Wiggins and the Warriors, who are clearly okay with it anyway, of just letting him sit out until everything's fine. So I hope everything's good with him.
I know what it is, and it's Andrew Wiggins has missed games for the same reason that I went off the grid for 4 months. He is playing like a Dragonetian. He's trying to 100% it. The RNG drops are fucking brutal. It's really hard to get all 206 weapons. The materials grinding, it's really hard. You can't maintain a job and 100% that game. Fellow gamer Wiggins, I think that is
stand with him. Yeah,
exactly.
Our comrade.
Like I've put 105 hours in the game and I'm still not done. Like Wiggins, that's how many games has he missed? 30 times 2.5, 60. He's still got like 40 hours of that game left to play if he wants to 100% it. So
yeah, it's tough. Somehow the Sixers only have 40 points at halftime. I don't know how that's possible. Okay, so let's move on to the Lakers as my last team on here. And I actually had Jared Vanderbilt as my swing guy for them. The reason why is if LeBron can get healthy, in order for them to win a playoff series, I do think Vanderbilt's going to have to play a lot of minutes, and I don't know if shooting-wise he can stay on the court with LeBron and AD, who are certainly going to need more spacing. But I like this Lakers team a lot more with him and Reeves in his new role. And D'Lo's up and down, but when D'Lo's on a heater and Beasley too, is certainly a more competent regular team, and I think Vanderbilt can lift their defensive ceiling a lot.
Okay. That's different from what I had. I had Joe Biden pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell so she can return and deliver the adrenochrome that LeBron James and Anthony Davis so badly need to get healthy. Also, Ghislaine, she has connections. She could continue whatever's going on in Adam Silver's NBA here that has caused Reeves to suddenly get like 15 fucking free throws a game. I don't know what's happening there. Did you see that? Why is that happening?
I watched. He gets a superstar whistle. It's crazy.
It's absurd.
Dude, someone pointed this out like 2 months ago during a game. I was like, why is Austin Reeves getting like calls that like Kawhi Leonard would get? Yeah. Like, what the fuck? Like, dude, it's like, honestly, other than like the true superstars in the league, I don't think anyone gets a better whistle than Austin Reeves. And it's finally coming to the surface. Also, last question before we get out of here. Would you rather have Austin Reeves or Cade Cunningham?
I saw you tweet this.
People got so mad at me. They thought I was being serious.
Yeah, I'm not being serious when I say rather have the guy who can play in an NBA game.
Well, I mean, not Cade's fault, really.
No, it's not Cade's fault. He was drafted 10 spots too high. What are you going to do? It's the same thing that happened to Wiseman.
It either goes one direction or the other, where all of these clips age like fucking dog shit.
I know. I hope that there is a draft Twitter super. When I saw you tweeted that, I knew that the draft Twitter was going to hire the twins from Breaking Bad to just like sit on the end of your bed while you showered with the fucking the machete.
Yeah, I got 14 replies to it. Most of them being like, are you serious?
You're gonna get Tortuga on the table. Danny Trejo's guest spot from Breaking Bread. Trill getting decapitated by Draft Twitter.
Yeah, so hopefully this episode doesn't air in Detroit.
All right.
You
were really nice to Wiseman.
Yeah.
I feel bad. I wanted to like Detroit. I took the over. By the way, you know what's crazy? I looked at it. I think the only over-under lock that either of us are going to miss is the Pelicans under lock, which like was the one.
It's bullshit.
Yeah.
It's fake. Even without Zion, they should be better than this.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's a bummer.
Makes me sad.